Hello, welcome to my channel and welcome to my website. My name is Daryl and this is Programming in Any Language. The website is www.black-duck.com. It's where you'll find all my videos organized in logical order. Let's take a look at the list. The list collection is very similar to the ListBox. The main difference is that you don't have the box. Essentially, the list is a single-dimensional array that can grow and shrink as needed. The beauty of this is when you read a file, you don't need to know how many records you're going to read. You simply keep adding the items as you read them to the list. You saw something similar to this if you watched the videos in the speed track section. There, we built a database-like application using the ListBox to store data. I put together a similar application for this lesson. However, instead of using a ListBox, I used a list. And since all the data is in memory and invisible to the user, I used a label to display one element in the list and provided the user with a set of navigation buttons so the user can step through that list. This is very common when working with database applications. This video is an intro. It sets the stage for the list. In future videos, I'll show you how to build the list application step by step. Here's the intro. We've been dealing with arrays for quite some time now. Many topics. The single dimension, two dimension, beyond, all kinds of stuff. Even the image list had arrays in it. This is our final topic on arrays. It's called the list. And it's like a single dimensional array, and it's like the ListBox itself. In fact, it has an index, and it's like ListBox, except it's invisible. You don't see the objects that are in there. They're sitting in memory someplace, and you can actually display them. What I did is, if you remember the anything database, you can see that in the speed track section of our website, and also in the playlist called Speed Track, where we use an anything database. It's basically using a ListBox, and it's creating a program that you can capture things and navigate through them. This is an improvement. What you're looking at right now on the screen is the list database. It's the anything database, but a list version of it. And so, in other words, all the data is sitting inside a list, inside memory, which you don't really see it unless you display it one item at a time. And this is somewhat different in the fact that we have navigation buttons on here, which is something you're going to be learning about when we start working with databases, how to navigate through a list of records and setting up for the user so they can easily go through that. And that's what this is all about here. So we're going to be looking at this guy, and I'm going to use this as an example as I go through and explain what a list is. And then we'll get to work on actually building this thing down the road so we can actually have it in hand. There's a lot of nice features in it we're going to get a look at. So let's begin. The list collection, the C# list is a class in the .NET framework that is similar to an array with the following advantages. A list does not require size declaration. You don't have to know how many records you're going to have. Its size is automatically adjusted. Like the ListBox, you can keep adding things to it, and it'll keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So you can, it's very versatile from that standpoint. And you can add and remove items from it. Just pull them out, and it shrinks the list. Add more, and it makes the list bigger. It's very easy to create a list. You basically identify it by saying the data type you're going to be using, list string, list int, list whatever. Give it a name, and new list data type. That string here is sitting there. There's a couple examples right here, list string and names. There's a string list, new list strings. So it's going to be a list that holds strings. Another list int numbers is a new list int, and it'll be a list that holds integers. The screenshot you saw a little while ago of the list version of the anything database, this is code from it. And you'll see a number of things where I'm identifying records and everything. But basically the list string, LST stuff is what we're going to be calling it, new list string. This is how you actually set it up. Not very hard to do at all. It's quite simple. You can also initialize a list implicitly. And that means creating the list and then assigning data to it right away. I tend to not do this. There may be reasons for doing this. If you have a list of a certain number of zip codes or certain products you want to have on hand that you know they're always going to be there, you can actually put them in and define it right away so your list is there. I tend to add to my list from a text box or a database and build it that way because I've got my data out there. In fact, the anything database list version will actually read and write a file, and you can bring things in and save it and whatever else. You're adding items to a list is very, very easily. It's just like the list box. You list string, name list equals new string as we're creating it right here. Then we're adding Chris, we're adding Bill. So namelist.add, namelist.add. In our anything database, we have that same thing here, right here. We're actually taking ls stuff, which is what the list is called, .add, and then we're taking a text box and putting it right in there. We're doing a lot of other things too. We're displaying the count, setting focus, turning buttons on and off, which is part of what you would do for an application. But primarily, this first line right here is how you add an item to the list. Nothing simpler than that. There's a count property, much like a text or list box or an array. There's always a count property. The list property holds the number of items that are stored in the list. So you always know how many you actually have. For example, for x index equals 0, name list, the count, as long as we don't go over that count, we can go ahead and have a message box to show us the names in that list. In our anything database list version, we use that count to actually know how many records we actually have. We use it later. So int record count is equal to ls stuff done count. So I'm grabbing this whenever I need to so I can display the number of records in the database on my screen and get it up there. So that's what it's all there for. In fact, we display it right here. You can access items in a list basically using an index. You use a subscript notation to access items in a list just as you can with an array. And here's a little loop. So for index is 0, index is less than name list count, and we're going to increment the index by 1 each time, and we're going to have a message box that's going to show that list. So that's going through the same process. In our anything database list version, we can just pull off the current record. As long as you know what the current record is, we have some kind of index in there, some number, and then we can just point to it and grab it and put it in a text box. So anywhere in the list, we can travel down that list, stop anywhere we want, and with that index, we can grab what actually is stored there and put it into a text box, and then, edit it, change it, whatever we want to do with it, delete it. We can also pass a list to a method. No different than an array. Like objects like arrays, list objects like arrays are passed by a reference. It's getting the list, it's expecting a list called string, and it's going to be called slist as we get it. So we get that guy, and then we just take it and we wrap through it in this for each loop and put everything in a message box. Just to basically show you how that's actually used. We can remove items from a list, so it's very easy to delete things from it. Here we can actually name something in there. It'll remove Bill. In my case, I have Daffy Duck out there at Elmer Fudd. I could remove them by name. But remove at method, it works very well because you can use the item at a specific index in the list. And you can remove a list, remove at 0. And in my anything database, we have a delete button here. And what delete actually does, it removes at a current row and then gets rid of it. We might use this even for changing something if we want to insert, which you'll see in a bit, where we'd actually delete that record, but in that spot, we hang on to that spot and put something else in there. Nice way of doing an edit. The insert items into a list. To insert an item, you use the insert method to insert it an item at a specific index. So name list.insert Joanne at item at index 0. So the very, very first item is going to become Joanne here. On my button update here in the index anything database list version, we actually do the remove at. So we're actually removing the current record, and then we're putting what's in the text box into that current record at the same spot. So it's basically getting rid of something and adding and inserting something at that same spot here. So it gives a simulation of that we made a change to it. In reality, when you do an edit, you're actually doing a delete and an insert. You're getting rid of what was already there and putting something to replace it. So it looks like we might take the Mr. off of Daffy Duck. Mr. Daffy Duck now says Daffy Duck. By removing Mr. Daffy Duck and replacing it with Daffy Duck. You'll see that in our anything database as well. Searching for items in a list. This is a great part of lists, is basically you can search for things. And the nice thing you can do is because you can use subscript notation to access the items in a list, you can adapt any of the array processing algorithms that you saw in previous videos. So they work with a list. You can write code that performs a sequential search, binary search, selection, sort, and beyond to work on a list. An easy way to search for an item in a list, however, is use the index of method. And that's what I'm going to use in my anything database. The index of method accepts a value as an argument and searches for that value in the list. If the value is found, it returns that index. So you've got that index and you know what record you're at. If it's not found, it returns a -1. Sound familiar? It's just like the list box. If you do a search on a list box and you find nothing there, you get a -1. If you find it in a list box, you get the index and you can work with it that way. So very, very similar to the list box itself. Using a list should not be difficult to learn if you've got control or command of the list box itself. There's little minor differences, but it's not too different at all. Here is the case where we're actually using that index of in the anything database list version. Basically, right up in here, we have our current record. We're looking for that index. So we say ls stuff index of whatever the text box is. So we're taking something in the text box, and it's using that to then search the list. And if it finds it, we get that index of that particular field inside its current record. And then I can take in current record and do something with it. There's an if statement followed in here, because if it's not equal to -1, we found the record. And that, if we found it, we can give a message off. We can display a record count. We can do everything we want. We can change it, whatever we want to do. Or we can enable the edit button, enable the delete button, so we can work on that thing. If we end up with a -1, then we simply say the record is not found in the list. We didn't find that guy in there. So very easy to work with. The index of method is going to be slow if you've got thousands and thousands of records out there. It's going to be a little slow, and you might want to use some of the other techniques you might use in sorting through an array, binary search, whatever. But the index of is going to work for a normal size array or a reasonable size array. A couple hundred items is not going to take all that long to go through. This is what that anything database looks like. Basically, we have navigation buttons in here, and this is going to be kind of important, because if you click on this one, you're going to go to the top of the record. If you click on this one, you're going to go to the bottom of the file. This one goes reverse order, navigating through the items until it gets to the top, and it'll tell you then it got to the top. And this one goes to the end and ends there. In fact, we've got it sitting right here. I can actually kind of display this thing by doing a start on here, and we'll take a look at it. This is the anything database list version we have right now. You can actually do a load, which is going to go ahead and use the dialog controls to actually find any files that I might have saved someplace. So I don't just arbitrarily grab a file. I'm grabbing any file. I can create a bunch of different ones if I want. So I'm going to grab my guys right here and open it, and it brings it in. The file has been loaded to the list at this point in time. So what happens? Well, what happens is I can now use this thing. I can use this navigation thing to go to the top of the file. Tweety Bird's in there. Go to the bottom of the file, and Sylvester the Cat's in there. I can navigate backwards and look at Petunia Pig, Porky Pig, and Elmer Fudd, and Daffy Duck. He's the first one. And if I keep on going, it's got a bunch of stuff with Tweety Birds on top, so the top of the file right there. I can now go forward, and I can go Daffy Duck, Elmer Fudd, Porky Pig, Petunia Pig, Sylvester Cat, and so on in the line, or at the end of the file there. So it makes it kind of nice to actually go through this thing. I can go ahead and clear this out and put something totally different in there. I think we've got Foghorn Leghorn, Foghorn Leghorn, and just simply do an add here. Well, I actually spell them wrong. That's okay. And somebody else, we can put Grandma in here. And she's now in the database. We can go to that bottom, and there's Grandma. And we go backwards in here. There's Foghorn Leghorn, but he's not looking good. He's looking kind of, we spelled him wrong. So we can actually go ahead and search on Foghorn and get his position, and then we can make that change. So what we'll do is we'll edit him and put an RN here, and then update. And now we can go ahead and go to the end here, and let's go backwards and see where that Foghorn is now looking good here. Sylvester Cat, Petunia Pig, all things are nicely set up there. If I want to get rid of one record like Elmer Fudd, we can simply delete that record by searching on it and then deleting it. And he's now gone forward and backwards, and Daffy Duck's at the top of the file. Tweety Bird's top of the file. That's in there. I can save this thing, and it gives me a chance to actually create a different. I'll say more guys. We'll say more guys right here. .text, and I'll save that. Now I've got two databases sitting out there that I've actually saved, and I can now clear this. So there's nothing there, and my database now has been cleared. Oops, yeah, it's been cleared. And we can go ahead, exit if I wanted to. I could come back in. And I can load. Now I have a choice of loading either one. I can load that more guys or my guys, the first one. If I want to take that second one in here, I can bring that in, and it'll bring in everything we've had. And we can go to the top of that record and start going through there, navigating, and we should see Grandma on the end here. And there she is, sitting at the bottom of that file. So the editing database is going to be very versatile. And seeing how this navigation works, how you can actually make it work, is something we're going to be using going forward when we start working with databases as well. In fact, we're only using one kind of record in here right now. We're using a single record, the name. Once we finish with all this array stuff, the list is the last thing we're going to be doing. We're going to be looking at strings, string manipulation. I almost hate to say this to you right now, but a string is an array. It's an array of characters. We're going to be looking at that, and the fact that it is an array of characters is going to allow us to manipulate strings very easily and actually create much more significant databases that are going to have fields and records and all kinds of good stuff in it as we get ready to start creating things in SQL database or any of the other databases that are out there and make these things work. Well, you see how to format the data. So that's what the list database looks like. That's what the list looks like. It's the last thing we're going to be doing with arrays, but I will have a couple videos coming forward where we're actually going to build this thing for you so you can see how it actually works. Very versatile. Lists can definitely be a go-to structure instead of the array for many applications. I'll show you how to build this application next. And in future videos, after we learn about how to manipulate strings, we'll build a data entry application for adding records to a database. I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching. And don't forget to use the website for easy access to all my videos. And if you get a chance, please subscribe. That way, you'll be notified when something new is available. We'll see you in the next video. Take care.